Hey there, Transformers. Welcome to Work Transformed, the podcast that tackles the ever-evolving world of product development, project chaos, and everything in between. Each episode, we'll dive into the hottest trends, unpack the latest tools, and chat with inspiring guests who are leading the charge. So, buckle up, get ready to transform your work, and let's do this.
Here we go. Welcome to another episode of Work Transformed. We are here today. This is Jackie Bettner. We also have Thomas Lenore, and I am super excited for this week's episode because this is the first time that we are going to have a special guest. So joining us today is going to be Andrew Golden. Andrew, say hello.
Hello, everyone.
And Andrew is a seasoned veteran in the recruiting world, and he is going to hang out with us as we talk all things recruiting. So we've got a few directions I think Thomas and I kind of chatted about that we'd like to go. But before we dive into those topics and those directions, Andrew, it is lovely to see you on our podcast.
Well, thank you very much.
Well, it's lovely for us to see you because the people listening can't.
Well, I did both for them to hear you. You can't hear me, but I look fabulous because I hadn't showered or shaved all day. Before this call, I actually shaved. So I hope that I sound clean shaven. But thank you both for having me. I just tell you a little bit about myself. I've been recruiting since before we had computers on our desks. I know that ages me. That definitely ages me. I started recruiting in '98. When my toughest to find hire was a visual RPG 400 developer. So I've been recruiting for about, 26 years. Everything from entry level work all the way up to hired a couple CISOs. So across the gambit, not really, I would say I don't really focus on either end, really end at the low end, entry level, and I don't focus as much on the C level, but everything else in between I've probably done.
Well, good. That's a lot of great insight for folks who are listening.
I'm happy to help. I find that recruiting and interviewing are those topics that a lot of folks feel that they have a lot of knowledge to because it seems very intuitive. And it really should be, but there is a ton of nuance.
Oh no!
Sometimes you can't, and that's sometimes where it gets very frustrating. Where what seems to be easy never is. I will tell you this. Tell me when to stop talking, guys. But I will tell you from one anecdotal bit. If someone walks out of an interview and says, "Andrew, I'm sure I got the job," I would highly bet against that person. I don't know.
Ooh, now, why do you say that? Why is that?
Oh, he's going to bet against someone feeling confident that they got the job. Dive into that for a second. And then we'll go into our content.
My theory on that might be one of two things. The first might be that I personally hear it. And that I remember that someone gets on the phone with me. Oh my God, Andrew, I killed that interview. I nailed it. And then they didn't. And it strikes me more. But I think what I believe to be more the case is that folks who feel like they rocked an interview may have rocked the interview, or they may not be really self-aware of the answers that they're giving and how the answers are perceived. I think a lot of interviewers will answer a question, sit back, and whatever people throw out there, they're like, yeah, thanks. And they move on to the next question. And I think that can give us a false sense of success. Now, how do you fight that?
That's interesting because as a person who's been a hiring manager for many years, I will 100% agree with that. Especially, I'll say, if the answer is really bad. I am not in the position of like, derail you mid-sentence to say like, that is actually an awful answer. And it often tells me that you are either inexperienced or just don't know the domain space that I'm hiring for. So like, what value is it for me to say like, oh, I didn't like that answer? Like, I just go along with it and quickly try to get you off the interview. I'm like, oh, wonderful. I don't have any more questions. Thanks so much.
And I think a lot of folks, when they hear that answer, they don't, like you said, they don't want to get in a fight. Okay, that's your answer. Moving on. And I do that too. And I think all interviewers, it's your job to keep a positive vibe going in the interview. So you're not going to stop that by going, God, that was so wrong. You're not going to stop an interview there. I mean, actually, I've had interviewers do that, and they don't get better from there generally. But yeah, I could tell stories. But
well, so in the vein of storytelling, I think we're looking for you to tell multiple stories. And so let me just kind of tee us up a bit today. We've already kind of started going down one path that I want to keep going down, but for the sake of context setting, I think today we would love to talk a lot about what recruiters are looking for, interview skills, things that do's and don'ts of kind of that world. But there's also another topic that if we don't have enough time for in this episode, maybe we can have a follow-up episode. But I'm really intrigued to learn from you how you best work with internal teams at your organization. I want to know what makes recruiting's days great, and I want to know what makes their life a living hell. And so and what things we can do as hiring managers or teams that are going through whatever these processes to make it so that it's continuously improved. Side note, everyone, Andrew was my recruiter at a previous job.
But if it makes everybody feel better, she was a referral, so I don't get any credit for finding Jackie.
Oh, I didn't know that.
No, you were a referral. But no, you're one of my and
you still talk to me?
I'm sorry. No, okay. So you want to know what recruiters love? We love referrals, first of all. But the honest, what do recruiters look for? I mean, I would say the first thing that people don't. It's going to be a tough thing to hear, but I believe this. And again, I'm not a numbers guy. I'm an intuition guy. That's why I'm a recruiter and accountant, or someone who makes a lot of money. But we want people who are qualified for the job. And I would say of people who do not get moved on to whatever the next level is, be it the second interview, third interview, fourth interview, what they all have in common is 85% to 90% aren't qualified. Now, is that not qualified on paper versus what you read as the job rec? Or are you not qualified versus what's on the job rec and the other stuff? What's the other stuff? Well, let's talk about what makes a good hiring manager before we talk about that. But I mean, there is reality that people just sometimes aren't qualified. And a lot of times managers have a very, very specific outlook on what they're looking for, right or wrong. And as a recruiter, it is my job to try to pull some of that apart and allow for a little more flexibility, to allow for more learning on the job versus someone who can do absolutely everything walking in the door. And personal anecdote, I don't like hiring for people who are perfect, who have done the exact same job, because how do you keep that person excited for the long term? But you're going to ask, well, what can I do if I'm not 100% qualified to get to the next level? The number one thing that I would say is passion, and it's enthusiasm, and it's excitement. And that is what people want to work with. I mean, we may not always want to work with that person who's over and above excited and ready to rock and roll when it's 5 o'clock on Thursday and you want to go out and do something and they're still working. But it's rare that someone who is excited really shows not only that they can do the job, but that they want to. It's rare that that person walks out of an interview and the interviewer says, terrible candidate. They may say, I would love to hire that nice lady or gentleman. They're just not qualified. But I do know that passion, enthusiasm, interest in the role, and a willingness to learn, that is what people are looking.
It's almost like an inspection of the soft skills of the candidate, right? Like, I might not be 100%. So let me just say this back to make sure that I am understanding how you're describing it. I might apply for a job that maybe I'm not 100% qualified for, but if I go into that interview with great questions, this eagerness to learn, and this enthusiasm for, I would love this challenge, I already know how I would approach a couple of different things. Like, that goes a longer way than if I gave you this perfect resume that said, I check all of these boxes, hire me. Okay, I'm following you.
But what you threw in there that is key is that you were saying, I'm going to do my homework. I'm going to get ready for the interview. I know the company. I know this is going to sound silly, but I know the company's values. I know what's important to them. When you can show those things, I think that's as important as as being able to show that you are excited to learn. I'm gonna give it, and you want stories, so let me give you a story.
Yeah,
It's folks that I won't mention because we all know them, but they're great guys, and they might have worked in DevOps at a company called E08. But we hired, we were interviewing for a DevOps role, and it was a DevOps role very heavy on AWS. I found a gentleman who I thought was wonderful. He was just a go-getter, fireball, wanted to learn, total dork, and I say that with the most respect humanly possible. But he had done nothing on AWS. And it's a great manager who really believes in basics and believes in building from basics. And this gentleman interviewed, and basically he said, I know I don't know X, Y, and Z, but here's what I've learned since I talked to Andrew. And instead of saying he doesn't have enough, what we did was had the gentleman do a quick test and then prove it out in 3 days. This gentleman had spent the entire weekend studying up on AWS to become, to make that transition from, I think it was GCP, from GCP to AWS. He wasn't, the perfect candidate after that weekend, but being able to show that he was going to learn and that he wanted to learn, wanted to grow, he came to work for us for 2 years, left for like $50,000 more.
No, I'm curious because you handle a subject that I think is really important, because I've had candidates before who interview and like got pretty far in the interview process, and then I was like, so what exactly does this company do? And I'm like, you got this far and you don't know, and also you were this interested in having this many interviews and don't know. So I think it is important that folks do their homework and come in prepared. But how do you as a candidate showcase that you've done your homework in a way that doesn't seem like you're just peppering in unnecessary information and saying like, oh, I know you all do this, I know you all do that? Like, how do they work it into the conversation in a way that feels organic?
Yeah, that's actually a very good question. It's like I tell people, definitely look at the interviewers on LinkedIn, but don't mention that you did, because that seems super creepy.
Wait, I've had some people like, I saw you on LinkedIn and know you went to this school. And I'm like,
right,
I know that.
Right. Yeah, great. You're creepy. Stop staring at me. But how to show that you know about the company without saying, I learned about you guys. I think there's the Google is an incredibly powerful tool.
The Google.
Find out not only, and I will say, I'll be the first to admit I blew an interview when the first question was, what do we do? And it was absolutely wrong. And it was a very quick interview, though we did go the entire very painful 30 minutes. But I think if people do their background, understand the goal of the company, look at other jobs within the organization, look where they're hiring, especially if you're on the technology side. There is so much you can learn about a company's tech set and what they do and how they do it by reading all the job recs. Then you can tell exactly what their stack is. You want to find out where things are going. There's so much written on the Google about pretty much every company on the planet. You can understand where they've been, where they're going, et cetera, et cetera.
Ooh, that's kind of sneaky, because you're right. They're constantly hiring developers. So each developer has some specialty, and they're telling you, here's what we expect this person to know. So you're right. You can learn from it. Just like,
for example, if I'm interviewing for a tech recruiter job at a company, I don't just worry about what they're talking about on that job. I look through all their jobs. So I can say, I see that you guys are a, just real basic, you guys are a Java shop. I've done that at Sears, at Nielsen, and blah, blah, blah. I try to anticipate the questions that are going to be asked of me in my research so that I feel like I'm more prepared. Sometimes you can over prepare. And I know that I've done that in a lot of cases where I feel like I might steamroll some people. And you may not get that from my personality. I don't know.
I have kind of a question that's going to maybe not contradict. Maybe it's going to give us some parameters for what the right level of preparation is. So
that's good.
The market today is rough. It's a rough one at the moment, especially for tech. And so, there's a lot of people applying for a lot of positions, and it's almost as if you have to exponentially up the amount of apps that you get out there. And so it's not really conceivable that you're going to know everything about every company to a level that you'd want to when you initially apply. So what's a good level of prep?
So I guess my question is, and this is just, I'm only me, right? I don't run a group of recruiters anymore. All I know is that every single time I get on the phone with someone, I've already told them that I'm going to call them. Okay. So
True.
I think you should do different levels of prep work or based on who you are, where you are in your career, the job, and what level it is. If you're just talking to me, you might actually be surprised because I am going to get a little deeper into the technology than you might imagine. I don't always know the answers of what I'm asking, but I'm going to ask. So be ready for anything. Now, does that mean that you should spend 6 hours prepping before you talk with another moron like me? Probably not.
Oh.
But I'm never going to ask anything that isn't something that you should theoretically know at a basic level.
Yeah.
And know about yourself. But what I would tell anyone who's interviewing is when you're looking at your resume, look at it from a perspective of, oh, that's what I did 10 years ago. That's what I did 6 years ago. The problem is I couldn't even tell you without looking at my resume what I did 3 years ago. I think I remember, but in terms of the jobs and whatnot, I couldn't tell you off the top of my head. But, and I've shot so many videos about this, I feel like it's almost like throwing it into the wind because I've said it 100 times. When you are going to do an interview, it's a real easy prep way of doing things. Okay. For those of you who remember what printing is, you still have a printer? Print out
Yes, I do.
Basically, it's called the 3-page method. You have your resume on one page, you have the job description on another, and then you have a blank piece of paper. Look at that job description. Anywhere it talks about something that you would do or that they're asking of you, write down notes where you've done it. I think the tough thing about interviews is people will they're looking at your resume, you're looking at the job spec. The job spec is today. The resume is your past. And a lot of folks don't go far enough back to remember what they used to know or what they used to do. And I feel like the difference is in prep. I can tell you that the population that interviews the absolute greatest, and it's going to surprise you, is sales folks. When I talk with someone who's in sales, it's a great conversation. They know what I'm going to ask, and they're ready for pretty much everything. They've already looked up my company. They know probably more about it than I do. They've looked at LinkedIn. They know everybody who works here that they know.
Yep.
And I'm sad to say a lot of different fields, people generally don't put as much work into it. But I think that's the sales mindset. I think a real sales hunter.
I was going to say, I think that makes sense to me. You know, if you have that sales mind, you have to sell yourself.
Mm-hmm.
But I like the thing that I actually kind of gleaned, because I've always heard this, sell yourself, but it's almost like you're doing research on yourself, not only the company, but you have to like research yourself.
Right.
Yeah.
Oh, definitely. Definitely. Because it's your past. And I don't know about you, but my work moves so fast. I honestly don't remember what I did 3 weeks ago, let alone 3 years ago. So if I don't go look at my resume every time before I interview, it's what we call being on the tip of your tongue. You know you've done it. You just aren't ready to talk about it because you haven't thought about it in a long time. Take your time, think about it, especially in your tech field. You can go back and look through your old tutorials, look through your old notes, do a little Googling. It's a great tool. We all know we use it daily in everything that we do. Might as well do it before an interview too. But yeah, that prep is all about yourself. It would be better to know about yourself and to talk about yourself than spend all the time on the company. But I think it's a 50-50 or maybe 75 on yourself and qualifications for the job. And then the other bit being about the company itself. But I want to go back to a point.
Explicitly said out loud, just to round that point out. It's not only about remembering like what role you had at what point in time. It's like specific examples of accomplishments or milestones or things you drove or, lessons learned. So, because I've had people who are like, oh, I did that in this role. I'm like, okay, great. Tell me about the role. Like, don't just tell me that was a part of the role. Great. Anybody's going to say that. But like, tell me a story about a time where you were able to demonstrate that skill. You were able to demonstrate that you are a quick learner, because you keep saying that in this interview. So and not only just take an interview of an inventory of your actual job experience, but like, what are the experiences you had in that job?
But to your point, when you talk about stories from the past, you're going to be asked, tell me about a time when you, tell me about a time when you, not so great, when you something you're proud of, the more you think about your past, the more those accomplishments are going to come up. It stinks to have to make up stories in the middle of interviews. Tell me about a time you made a mistake. And I haven't made one, I don't know, long time, years.
Ever.
Never made a mistake.
No, it's like I tell people, I don't recruit for money. I don't need this job. I actually invented computer monitors.
You did.
Yeah, I did.
Okay.
And posted. I'm independently wealthy. I just do this for fun.
Mm-hmm.
But I wanted to go back to a point that no one ever asks about, Jackie. What makes a recruiter's life better? Internally.
Oh, yeah. Let's switch gears a bit. So now we're talking about we're flipping from the external interactions.
We're gonna have one last question before we flip over there. I think that's every topic. I worry we're gonna get past this. And I think this is one of the most challenging things that a lot of folks who are in the job market right now are facing. We talk a lot about like how to ace the interview, how to stand out when talking to the recruiter, et cetera. But right now, I'm sure it's very difficult to even get to the talk to the recruiter stage because you're just inundated with people. Back in the day, they said like, oh, get LinkedIn Premium and like send emails to recruiters. They'd say like, do all these things. But like, Andrew, what's working today? Like, if I truly do have the qualifications, experience, et cetera, how do I stand out in a world of automated resume reviews and all these things? Like, how do I make sure that I get to you to even have that first conversation?
Be fast, be first, or come to me directly. Okay, and I would, and it stinks, but the hard part about application is anybody with 10 minutes or 5 minutes or easy apply 30 seconds can apply. And that creates a lot of noise. And getting through that noise as a recruiter, I got bad news for the whole world that thinks everything's automated. It's not. I've worked with many ATS systems, and I'm yet to find one that knocks people out automatically. We still have to look at the qualifications. We still have to look at questions we might have asked you that would disqualify you, but the system doesn't disqualify you. So what that means is all resumes go into a gigantic pile. If I open a nondescript, semi-technical job right now, I will have 450 candidates the next day. Okay. Is that a good situation? No, that's bad for everybody because I can't get through 450 resumes. I can read a resume quickly, but I can only read about 300 a day. That more than that, my eyes will drop out. So you have to apply. Don't not apply.
That's impressive.
Yeah.
Don't drop your eyes out, but that is impressive.
300 might be 300 LinkedIn profile in a day.
Okay.
But I can read them quickly because I know what I'm looking for. And that brings us to another point we talk about in a moment. But if you're not the first in, do your homework. LinkedIn has really great resources to look for who works where, and you don't have to be a LinkedIn Prime or whatever they call it member. Go find the recruiters, HR managers, hiring managers, CEO, CIO, and get in touch with them. And that's where you have to actually be a good man. Because what I will tell you is there is nothing, it's like Hanukkah every day when candidates reach out to me and say, I saw that you posted this job, Andrew, and I'm a perfect match. It doesn't happen often, but I swear to the great spaghetti monster, it happened to me last week. And I was like, I don't even know what to do. The perfect person came to me. I didn't have to recruit them. So do your due diligence. Find out who the right person is to reach out to, who might be a me or might be the hiring manager for you. This is where all of you who probably saw my videos that said make connections on LinkedIn, make lots of friends, and y'all are like, I don't want to do that. I'm an introvert. Well, now it's tougher for you. Now you have to go make those connections and you have to reach out to people. And it's not a very comfortable feeling for a lot of people. How do I send a message to somebody? I don't know. You write it and you send it. I mean, there it is.
Just a shameless plug right now. If you're not following Andrew Golden or connected with him on LinkedIn, he does post videos with a lot of wonderful little nuggets in there. I know you've referred to it a couple of times. I've definitely watched the one about how do you showcase yourself, right? You have to, that's your time to shine when you're in an interview. And it kind of tracks with all of those things that we've been talking about. So shameless plug for you, sir.
Thank you, ma'am. I appreciate it. Please do follow me. It's all free. And I hope it helps some folks, because I find LinkedIn is a place where we've gotten away from true networking and helping each other and gotten to some other place that I don't love as much. And I think we should all jump on there and help others, because strangely, when you help others, that ends up helping yourself. Don't ask me, no. I should be helping me a lot more, but pretty good. Boss.
I sidetracked us. We're going to talk about internal things, but I just thought that would be really helpful. I think a lot of people are struggling right now. And encouragement, like lean on your second connections and your first connections and say like, hey, I know you don't even work in that department, but you probably have an HR person that you can talk to and kind of get me an in. Lean on those folks.
Yeah. And I will say this, as much as it's uncomfortable for a lot of people, be as active as you feel comfortable being. And there are lots of folks that say, oh, please put a post out a week. Oh, I can't think of anything, or I don't feel comfortable doing that. I get it. We're all different. I mean, I've got enough stuff in my past that's embarrassing. There's no going any further down. So, what do I
Be
care?
brave. Be brave.
No, seriously, be brave. I got my current job at Trellix because I am very active on LinkedIn, and someone said, hey, Andrew, I've been watching your videos. I'd like to talk to you about coming to work for us. Is that for everybody? No, but for one case, it worked. And remember, finding a job, it only has to work once.
Yeah.
And that's it only has, it's like marriage, theoretically. It only has to work once, right? You win that battle one time and you're done. But that's where it's tough to motivate yourself every day to do all these annoying things. Send applications, reach out to people you don't know. I mean, one of the things that I recommend is don't track these things, because it's too depressing after a while. And it's harder to look at your list every day and go, I've sent 165 applications. It's better to just wake up every day and send fresh ones.
I guess that's a really great point of advice, because you could really get sucked into this, like looking back and feeling sad instead of moving forward and being energized, because it does take a bit of a toll.
Mm-hmm. And I would say, some folks, why me? And I could probably tell you why. Some folks, it's just a matter of time. People who are incredible at what they do. It's just a tough market, and I think it's going to flush itself out in the next, hopefully, God willing, the creek don't rise, the next 6 to 8 months.
Okay. That's our projection here. Andrew's also a...
No more psychic. Everyone's not being...
No more...
gracious.
Thomas and I have this running joke that I want to put psychic on my resume, but I haven't quite successfully done it yet. All right. Are we ready to pivot? I know that you had some burning thoughts about working internally with our recruiting teams. And really what I'm going after here is to understand, what makes our recruiting team's life easier, what makes a good partner to recruiting. A lot of times, and I could speak from experience as a hiring manager, if I wasn't actively recruiting for people, I'm not close to the process. And a lot of times I don't know what the end-to-end looks like. So by the time I get a recruiter, everybody's upset. I'm upset that there's a process I didn't know. They're upset that everything's urgent. So how do we look at this end-to-end, and how do we help each other?
How do you love your recruiter as much as your recruiter should love you? Well, first of all, a lot of that falls on recruiter. I mean, it's hard to find good recruiters, because it's one of those things where when times are good, anybody who can fog a mirror can get a job as a recruiter. Now would not be one of those times. But I think that there's a shared responsibility in the process. And I feel like a lot of hiring managers go too far either direction. Either they're just going to go do the whole thing themselves because that's what works for them, or they're just going to wait for a stack of resumes. I feel like a partnership is what is needed. I think that the recruiter has to be able to ask good questions about what's the job. But the hiring manager needs to be able to answer those questions about I won't give a time frame. I asked the hiring manager, so it was another DevOps job. I was really good at this when it was hot. I said, so what are we looking for in this person? And the hiring manager said, I thought you would know that. And I said, no, I don't.
Oh,
I don't work in DevOps. That's your area.
Weird.
Probably
I've hired several people. I've never been like, I think the recruiter will know what I need better than myself.
I'm a pretty good recruiter, but I'm not that good. No, and I would say that I think as a hiring manager, you should feel empowered to ask a lot of your recruiter, but you also have to be realistic, and you have to be able to look outside of your own small situation, and you have to understand realities, and you have to trust your recruiter. If you ask me to find someone who does 4 different jobs concurrently at 25% less than market value for any one of those jobs, I'm going to be a good recruiter, I like to think, and tell you it's impossible. But a lot of recruiters will not, because we are attuned to looking upward and saying, yes, sir, no, sir, yes, ma'am, no, ma'am. So I think a lot of that on the hiring manager side, they have to be realistic in terms of realities, what can be done. And you have to believe your recruiter. But I think you also need to stay on top of your recruiter, because we get busy. But armed with the right information, a recruiter who takes on an assignment and says, we can do this, I think that it needs to be a positive relationship. I don't work for you. I work with you. And I think that's a better way of looking at it. I shouldn't have to chase you, and you shouldn't have to chase me. We should be meeting in the middle. Now, different recruiters work different. Different hiring managers work differently. I can be flexible. Managers need to be somewhat flexible too. But I think there's a lot of thinking out there, just what would be considered antiquated thinking that hasn't gotten to everybody at different places. For example, if someone has been at the same job for 17 years, they may understand why someone has had 3 jobs in the last 2 years. You've been in the same job. The rest of us have been fighting hard to get a new job. That person isn't a job hopper if 3 companies that they went to closed. You have to be open to different situations. I know it would be great if you did 7 interviews, and everyone on your team had a chance to weigh in. People don't do that anymore. You have to be flexible to find a situation that actually works both for the hiring manager as well as candidates at large. You can't ask folks to do things that you would never do.
I was going to say, that's a good point. And maybe a question that I have, interviewing for a candidate is also a time-consuming endeavor. And so what have you seen in like a good practices kind of realm for like how many interviews does like a candidate usually go through before they get a job offer? And I'm talking not the entry level, not the C-suite level, kind of your sweet spot, everything else in between. What are the expectations?
It goes without saying, but I'd find that if you don't count me, because I don't count me in the interview process, though I guess you should, there's generally 1 to 2 specific qualification rounds, i.e., can you do the job? And I believe in my situation, there's usually 1 either managerial, from the manager, or more behavioral based or company values based interviews at the end. That's usually with leadership and or teammates. My personal feeling is if you need to do more than 3, let's say 2 qualifications for the job, because I think that is the most important thing. You should, hire slow and fire fast, or fire fast and hire, I don't know. Either way, you should do your due diligence to make sure that you're giving this person a good fit and you're finding the good fit for yourself. So I think 2 interviews there. I think if you need more than 2 more interviews, you're wasting your time. And I think that's from a matter of not exactly knowing what you're looking for, or the hiring manager not being strong enough to take the lead and say yes or no. I think too many cooks definitely ruin the soup. And I think that there are realities when people need to say it's time to hire somebody. We're never going to find someone who has absolutely everything that we're looking for, but we need to be able to train. And if we're not ready to train, maybe we should bring in a consultant. because that person is the person who can do the job. I mean, you don't train consultants. They come in, they do the work, and then when you don't need them, you let them go. If you can't train anyone up on anything, why would that person go work for you? Then you get mad that they're only there for a paycheck. You're not teaching them. You're not growing them. What's their...
What are some qualities that you have in mind? Oh yeah, go ahead, Thomas.
No, well, this one might be tricky and a little bit controversial. But
I like it.
Maybe I'm curious. From a recruiter's perspective, how do you handle salary? And I think this is a question both ways, because I, as a hiring manager, have had recruiters bring me people who were not like literally hands down phenomenal candidates. And then I talk to the person, I'm like, yeah, I want 2x what you're paying. And I'm like, well, I don't know why this person came in the queue. Like, I can't hire them. And it's very hard to negotiate down that substantially. Like, if you're a little bit off.
And it's 2024. We've changed. The world has changed. Companies should be selling to candidates, because if it's not a candidate market now, when it is, it'll be a candidate market with a vengeance. It will. But I think that falls on the recruiter, first of all. Never, ever, ever send a candidate to a hiring manager for something, let's say $75,000 to $80,000 and above. Never, ever send that candidate without talking to them first on the phone. It stinks. Working on the phone, calling people's no fun, but recruiters got to do it. And nobody gets off the phone with me. Nobody gets sent to the hiring manager until we have a dollars conversation. And the truth is, I ask so many people that so often. I wish people could know that number, and then they would know that I'm not going to take it personally, use it against them, or probably remember it beyond my notes. It's like, I mean, let's be honest. You sent me your resume. I know where you live, right? Now you don't want me to know how much money you make. This is the time to advocate for yourself. Yeah. I think when candidates want to hide that in hopes of getting more money, I think that sets everybody up for failure. Because down the road, to your point, oh my God, this person is incredible. They're incredible because they're twice as good as you need, and they're twice as expensive. And I think that recruiters are really doing themselves and their hiring managers a disservice by not clearing that up in the beginning. Now, from the candidate perspective, what's my suggestion? Know what you're worth. Know what you want.
We shouldn't just say, "Oh, I'm open to anything." If you don't want to say, "Oh, that's fine too."
If somebody says to me, Andrew, money really doesn't matter, I'll say, the minimum wage is about $12. That work for you? And they usually say no, right? Actually, they always say no. Or I think of a funny joke, like, we're doing internships for $25 an hour. Does that work for you? And they'll say, no, it doesn't. And then we get serious. And I'll tell people what the salary range is. I'm happy to. It's not a secret. And understand something. It's 2024 where, yes, miracles do happen, but not that often. If the hiring manager is willing to pay to 100, they may go to 110, maybe to 120. They're not going to 160. You're looking at the wrong job.
Yeah.
And there's also the reality that if you're asking for the top end of the salary and they have to go above, what's going to happen when you get reviewed? And there's nowhere to move. If your manager is pretty well and likes their job, what you're... And is there anything wrong with that? No. As someone whose career is plateaued, I'm fine with that. But reality is that you should know what you need. And if that doesn't fit, going through the motions to find out you can't take that job because it's too low, it's just wasting everybody's time. And it's going to be worse. It's going to feel worse.
And I'll add one more. Yeah. I've had a really negative experience where not only did the recruiter discuss salary with the candidate and kind of met at a happy medium, I discussed salary with the candidate. And when we got to the offer stage, they came back and countered very aggressively, and it left a bad taste in my mouth. Now, and it was fortunate this candidate's example that they were so far ahead of all of the other candidates that we interviewed that we still continue to have that negotiation with them. But to be very honest and candid, as a hiring manager, if I had other options, I probably would have just gone with someone else because it was just it didn't feel genuine. It felt like when I gave you the opportunity to tell me that you weren't comfortable with the salary and I was more willing to talk about it, you said, no, this is perfectly within the range of what I was expecting. And then I gave you an offer and you're like, oh, it's 20 to 30,000 less than what I wanted.
But that brings to the point.
We talked about that earlier.
What both
That's
of you
my
are
job.
saying,
That's my job. Thomas, hiring manager, don't ask. Because I guarantee you, the manager asks someone who needs a job, it is about to be managed, they're going to say yes to whatever they say. Because they know that person's not writing the offer letter. I'm going to write the offer letter. And if they've already talked to me, the numbers might be different. But funnily enough, numbers usually go up throughout the process, not down. Sometimes they do. Sometimes people get excited that, oh my gosh, this would be my dream job. I would take $10,000 less. But I think some of that is...
They're just hitting on the ever evolving point of like the importance of pay transparency. It should take this headache right away, right? If candidates are saying what they want, if companies are open with the range that the job is offering, like that is a great way to get aligned. And I know like from a candidate perspective, especially earlier on in my career, asking for a number, I don't know why it was so anxiety inducing. Even if you knew it was right, it was still like, oh, can I have this plus like, can I have like dessert too after my meal? Like, like it's a stressful thing, and having that pay transparency or those conversations up front helps take that like one stressful thing off the plate of interviewing for somewhere.
But understand that the salary ranges are ranges. And there are companies that will put a midpoint plus X, midpoint minus X. And that doesn't necessarily mean that the top end is when you see $150,000 swing on a job, look in the middle. And that's probably where you're looking at the dollars. But I think I do believe in pay transparency. I believe in pay transparency. You should be able to wear it on your shoulder, because I think if people are worth what they're making, no one should ever be upset about that. And but that's me. I don't have a problem. But again, like I said, I've been asking people what they make for 26 years, right? Doesn't bother me.
Yeah.
What other questions can I answer?
What is your favorite color? No. Actually, I am curious about that, but we'll ask that later. I was going to say, what are your favorite qualities? Is it black? Oh, he pointed to his shirt. You all couldn't see that.
Black is also my favorite color, although when I tell people that, they often remind me that black is not a color, it is a shade. I find that to be very arrogant, but...
Excuse me. My favorite color is actually gray. I wear a lot of gray.
It is also a shade, though.
Isn't black
I'm a recruiter.
the addition of all of the colors together?
Listen, I didn't mean to get technical here. It's only the response.
I didn't realize that my art history class was something I should bone up on before this.
Absolutely. You're talking about this podcast the other go.
I was going to ask you, like, my like closing question is, what are some qualities that you look for in a hiring manager that partners well? What do they do? Are they funny? Are they serious? Like, what is your ideal hiring manager plus recruiter? What does that dream look like?
It's respect. I mean, it's absolutely respect. It's respecting my time as I respect your time, and being as responsive to me as you would someone on your team, as you would the person I'm going to hire for you. I'm going to work my tail off for you. I'm going to try to find the time to work my tail off for you. And if I do, and it takes you 5 days to get back to me on 2 resumes that you sent me, how you're prioritizing is not meeting your... Let's just put it this way. If a hiring manager says, I got time, I don't need people right now, that's different. When someone says, I have to have someone right now, and I stay up till 12 o'clock at night sourcing and come up with 5 people, and then you won't look at them for 3 days, that's tough. That's tough. But it's respect. It's being able to respect that I've actually done this a while. I may know a little bit about what I'm doing and how I'm doing it. I can't do your job. Don't do mine. Mm-hmm. But I think that there's a lot on the recruiters there too, because recruiters as a whole are not a profession that is well respected. And I think we've earned that. So I think a lot of it is being able to earn that respect. And it doesn't always have to be being the smartest person in the room, because Lord knows there's very few rooms I could walk into and be the smartest. But I think a lot of it's working hard and learning from your mistakes, learning how to work with people. And I think the same with hiring.
Well, I think that is a great ending point. So, to recap, which is my first time, so hopefully it's good.
You got this. I'm so excited for you.
Oh my God, now I'm nervous. Okay. We started off by talking about, as you're out here searching for jobs, really do your research. Know where you're applying to, know a little bit about the company, really be prepared to go into an interview and present yourself well. And on top of that, also research yourself. Like, do some internal inventory. Take your resume and compare it to the job description and really understand where you excel, where you have stories, where you have things that you can talk about, and where you might need to really, really prepare to put your best foot forward. Also, Andrew talks a little bit about what happens when you maybe meet most but not all of the qualifications, and really being able to showcase that you are someone who's a go-getter, someone who's hungry and has an appetite to do the job, and how explaining how you're going to go about filling those deficiencies. Caveat, I think that's if you are 90% of the way there and you are missing something, not if you are 40% of the way there and missing almost everything. Leverage your network. Don't be afraid to ask people to help, ask people to send your resume to their internal recruitment teams. Don't be afraid to LinkedIn and mail people if you have to. Do what you got to do. It's a tough market. There's a sea of resumes up for every position. You have to be willing to go after the job if you want the job. And then don't keep track. And just it gets overwhelming. I agree. As someone who has started a business and is like going after people and soliciting people unrequested for a living, it is very frustrating when you're like, oh, I reached out to 12 people yesterday and only one person responded. And they said, don't email me ever again. It's like, don't keep a running list. If they want you, they will call you back. You don't have to remember that you even applied. On the other side of things, from a hiring manager's perspective, you need to make sure that you, as a hiring manager, can speak intelligently to the role that you're looking for and the ideal candidate. The recruiter can do a lot, and they probably have some experience in that, but there may be nuances of your team or of that specific role that they don't know, and they are relying on you to give them that insight so that they can find candidates that match that profile. Also, feel empowered to ask a lot of your recruiter. I was surprised Andrew said that, but they are your partner, so feel like you can lean on them, but at the same time, respect that they are experts in their domain house. So don't be the recruiter. Ask the recruiter to partner with you in very specific ways. Also, make sure that your recruiting process is flexible and nimble. You want to make sure the process is accommodating to both you and the candidate. Don't have so many steps that the person gets burned out and just stops interviewing, and also don't have too few that you don't know that this is the right person. And finally, know your number. If you are asked what you are looking to make in a role, don't say you're open. Don't say, don't give your bottom number. Like, be realistic, because at the end of the day, you don't want to waste your time on a role where the recruiter could have told you very well, like, that's not the right range. And also, you don't want to be disappointed later on. Like, do your research. There are tons of websites out there that give you a range. I would never go to a Glassdoor and hold that to be 100% accurate and say, like, I know the other person made this. You don't know what they made. But if you go to a number of websites and get a kind of an average for the industry, you'll know a ballpark of where you should be. And then you can plus and minus based on your experience and how you may be a better or worse fit for the role. What did I miss, Jackie? Did I get it all? Did I leave something out?
You got all kinds of things. I feel very pleased by your...
Oh my God, gold star for me?
Yes, gold star for you. Andrew, gold star from Andrew.
Thank you. And Thomas, if I'm as good as you said in that wrap up, I think I'm doing pretty good. Thank you.
You are. And I want you to give the folks your contact information. If they want to get a hold of you, they want some help from you, whatever, like, how do they get a hold of you? Do you have a LinkedIn? Do you have a...
Find me on LinkedIn. Andrew Golden with the glasses. I work at Trellix. I'm not Andrew Golden, the other tech recruiter. Surprisingly, there are two. I'm gonna get rid of him at some point. But no, find me on LinkedIn. I work at Trellix in cybersecurity, and prior to that, I worked at Nielsen. Prior to that, I worked at companies that aren't even on my resume. But yeah, so definitely reach out to me. I am always happy to help pretty much anybody who approaches in a positive way, and some that don't. So please reach out.
Well, thank you. You don't know how much you've probably made some listeners' day. I know you've give me a new perspective on a lot of things. So I really appreciate you taking the time to come chat with us.
Well, thank you, sir. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for being our first guest. And thank you for being on Work Transformed.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.